In 1656, a Dutch merchant ship was gliding through the treacherous seas off the western shores of what we now know as Australia. The surface looked peaceful, but lurking below was a lethal reef ready to shred the hull to pieces. Suddenly, the ship collided. Timbers shattered. Water surged in, and in mere minutes, the vessel was doomed. Out of the 193 souls aboard, just 75 endured the chaos to reach the beach. The others were claimed by the depths, never to be seen again. But the real enigma didn't unfold in the ocean. It started months afterward, when help finally arrived, only to discover that the last 68 men had vanished without a trace. No remains, no clues, no answers. For almost 4 centuries, their fate has lingered as one of the eeriest unsolved puzzles in seafaring lore. What could have gone so horribly wrong? The vessel, called the Batavia, was a massive Dutch East India Company trader, about 130 feet in length and over 250 tons heavy. It set sail from the Netherlands in October 1655, heading to Batavia, today's Jakarta. Like other ships back then, it hauled priceless cargo, silver coins, exotic spices, merchandise, and essentials for Dutch empire building. The trip was uneventful for months, but the riskiest stretch wasn't from buccaneers or tempests. It was the western edge of Australia, back then dubbed New Holland, notorious to mariners for its hidden shallows, inaccurate charts, and unforgiving beaches. On the evening of April 28, 1656, catastrophe hit. The ship rammed a reef around 60 miles north of present-day Perth. Sharp coral tore into the bottom as swells battered the craft apart. Crewmen plunged into freezing waters under pitch-black skies. Only 75 clawed their way to solid ground, gripping wreckage and splintered planks. The castaways ended up marooned on a desolate, empty strip of land. They scavenged some provisions and part of the ship's riches, but rations were slim, clean water rare, and cover non-existent. Salvation felt like a long shot. Captain Arian Jacobs realized they couldn't just linger. One longboat from the ship had made it through the wreck. It was their lifeline. Jacobs picked 7 tough survivors and dispatched them northward on a desperate quest. Voyage over 1,400 miles of vast sea to Batavia for aid. That left 68 behind on a barren shore, with no guarantee they'd last. If rescue failed, their story might fade into oblivion. And as events unfolded, that dread became reality. Because they did come, but the men were already gone. Captain Jacobs and his crew battled massive swells, fierce gales, blistering heat, hunger, and dehydration. Their stocks ran low fast, and exhaustion nearly finished them off before any sight of land. Yet, miraculously, they made it to Batavia. Upon arrival, they were so worn out it took days to recount their ordeal. Once they did, officials acted swiftly. A relief expedition was dispatched right away. By the end of 1656, Dutch vessels headed back to Australia's west coast, anticipating 68 weary but alive men awaiting on the beach. What they encountered instead was profoundly disturbing. The camp was deserted. Embers were extinct. Gear strewn about. Belongings left as if mid-use. But the people? Vanished. The rescuers combed the coastline. They probed caverns, bluffs, and nearby wilds. They called out into the void, desperate for an echo. Silence. No corpses. No burials. No hints of foul play or conflict. Even stranger, the salvaged silver and goods from the wreck were gone too. It seemed like the men had risen one morning and erased themselves from existence. Exploration teams ventured deeper into the interior, tackling rugged landscapes unknown to outsiders. The terrain was arid, harsh, and merciless. If thirst or the elements killed them, where were the skeletons? If assailants struck, where was the evidence? In time, the searchers had to abandon hope. They sailed back to Batavia empty-handed. In the years that followed, the Dutch mounted more hunts. Each ended in defeat. The lost men stayed lost. The sunken hull gradually disintegrated in the surf. The riddle grew darker. So what really transpired? One idea is the group wandered inland seeking hydration, got disoriented in the endless outback, and died miles from the sea. Another guess is they crafted crude floats and got carried off by the mighty Indian Ocean drifts. But these don't account for the total absence of proof. No bones, no sights, no remnants. Which brings us to the most captivating and debated theory yet. What if they didn't perish? What if they endured and slipped into a hidden life? Because centuries on, odd findings started emerging. Over 200 years post-wreck, in 1875, a British adventurer stumbled on a circle of rocks far inland near the stranding spot. It wasn't haphazard. Subsequent analyses revealed squared layouts in a purposeful design, maybe aimed seaward. Was it a beacon? A signpost? A guide? Rediscovered in 1938, it sparked fresh theories that the stranded might have journeyed inland and lived to leave markers. Then, another eerie reveal. Spanish silver coins. In 1931, scores of early 1600s silver pieces turned up buried in dunes north of the site. Kids unearthed more in the area years later. These matched Dutch trader cargo. How they end up there? A hypothesis posits the survivors headed inland, perhaps bartering or blending with indigenous Australian groups. Though debated, experts note Aboriginal peoples' deep expertise in endurance, oases, and wayfinding. Might desperate Europeans have allied with them? If true, it'd mark one of the first cultural merges between Europeans and Australia's First Nations. In 1963, divers located the wreck underwater. But it solved zilch. The absent loot stayed absent. No bones surfaced. No solid evidence appeared. More than 350 years hence, the facts lie concealed, perhaps under Western Australia's dunes, or faded from recollection. And that's what renders this tale so spine-tingling. No conclusion, no resolution, just emptiness. History sometimes offers no solutions, only enigmas. And the vanishing of those 68 souls stands as a stark warning of how swiftly people can evaporate from the earth. If tales of endurance, intrigue, and forgotten pasts hook you, hit subscribe and enable alerts. Because some enigmas refuse to remain hidden. And we're only warming up.